What is going on, everyone? Just before we jump into the video and I go through my normal intro and all that good stuff, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Fantasy Football Scout. If you haven't already signed up to become a premium member, there is a handy link in the description below where you can go ahead and do that, make use of all their tools and be better at FPL. There's a lot of stuff in their members area which is going to help you over the course of this season. Now, the good news is, and this is not some sales pitch, I'm sure it's going to go up at some point, but the £2.49 per month, which is billed annually, was due to go up after the Game Week 3 deadline. And I've just checked and they haven't put it up yet. So I'm sure they're going to remember to do that at some point. But right now it's still at that price. And if you don't want to pay annually, you can do it on a monthly basis instead. So if you want to use it for a month or two, see how you get on and then decide whether to keep that subscription going or not, then you can do that as well. And when you're in the member site, there is so many tools here. There's just too many to go through. My favorite ones are probably the fixture ticker, which is down here, called the season ticker, just on the left here. That's very customizable. You can look through as many game weeks as you want. You can do the next two. You can do the whole season, whatever it is, sort players by rotation and all that good stuff. Stats tables as well I use quite a lot, and then the comparison tools. If there's two players that you're not sure about, you can do that, as well as like the rate my team tool and all that other stuff I've talked about in other videos. So if you want to sign up at the current price, link in the description below, become a premium member today and help use it to help you throughout this FPL season. What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's community tips ahead of Game Week 4. So I put out a survey on Twitter, asked you to provide me with some data around certain discussions and topics going into the next game week, and we're going to run through them in this video. It also opens up stuff that maybe we haven't covered in other videos, such as captaincy. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you are new around here as well. The reason I've not done a separate captaincy video this week is because I think it's fairly obvious who the best option is. Like, next week there might be a bit more of a discussion. Last week there definitely was. But when Salah plays someone like Bournemouth at home, it's very difficult to argue against him. Now, I've listened to quite a few different Twitter spaces this week. I've listened to a few podcasts as well. And the general narrative seems to be that Salah and Liverpool are not playing that well. And to a certain extent, I would definitely agree. I'm a little bit of a numbers man. If you look at the non-penalty expected goals that teams have kind of accrued so far this season in 3 games, I think Man City are top around 5.8. And then you got Arsenal at 5.4, if I can remember off the top of my head. And then Liverpool at 5.1. So they're not playing well, and yet they're still generating quite a few quality attacks. They were down to 10 men against Crystal Palace for some of the game as well. They had a midfield of Milner, Henderson and Elliott against Man United, and yet they're still generating at least some good quality chances, not far behind Arsenal, who I think everyone would agree are playing really well, and obviously Man City doing Man City things. So if that's what they're like when they're not playing well, imagine what's going to happen when they finally click into gear and get going, and what better way to make that happen than Bournemouth at home. And obviously we're kind of going for Salah based on previous experience, what he's done over the last 5 years. But I've not really seen any sign of him slowing up. Yes, he hasn't been at his absolute best so far this season, but he's still got, what, like 2 goals, 1 assist, basically a return every single game. And now he's got one of the easiest fixtures you're going to have all season. So I think it's pretty clear that he is the best captain, at least in my eyes. There are some very good other options. I don't think we should rule out Haaland. I think he's also done really well so far this season in terms of total returns. But actually, he probably could have had more. He is going to get that kind of 3 attacking returns, maybe a hat-trick sometime soon. And it could come against Crystal Palace. And it's nothing against Crystal Palace. They are a very, very good side. And I don't think Man City will necessarily walk all over them. But it's at home for Man City and they will generate a lot of chances. Haaland will be in and around that box all the time. They start finding those passes to him, he's going to get a big, big haul sooner rather than later. So I can see why some people are going for him. Personally, I really think if I was not going to go for Salah this week, I'd probably take the easier fixture for Arsenal against Fulham at home rather than Palace at home for Haaland. I think Jesus, like most people agree, it looks right now, like in terms of the way he's playing, is probably one of the better players in the league right now. But again, I come back to, you know, that difference in perceptions, right? People think Arsenal are playing amazingly well, and they've generated like 5.4 expected goals, which is very good, by the way. Liverpool not playing well at all, and they're just behind at 5.1. So that's why I'm very keen on Salah. But I think Jesus is a good option. I think, again, you come back to all the other pluses for players like Haaland and Kane and Salah. You've got penalties. Minutes are all pretty good. I'm not saying Haaland's minutes are better than Jesus, by the way, but they've all got penalties. We're going to assume that in a Premier League game, Haaland will take a penalty ahead of Mahrez. Obviously, in the charity game, he didn't, but I think he will keep them. And I just don't think Mahrez is going to be on the pitch enough to be an issue. But obviously, again, with Salah, he is a midfielder. He is going to get extra points for goals, clean sheets. And I know Liverpool defence hasn't been good, But if they're going to start getting clean sheets, it's going to be this week against Bournemouth, because in attack, Bournemouth just don't look great at all. We'll have to wait and see if Solanke is available as well. So yeah, Jesus and Haaland, both really good options. I think if I was really going to go against the crowd, I think if I had a Spurs player, Son or Kane, that's probably where I'd be looking at for Nottingham Forest away. It's a pretty good fixture. I think the only way it gets much better is if it's at home. But Nottingham Forest have conceded the most expected goals so far this season. So if you did want to go against Salah, it could be Kane or Son, someone like that. I don't think I would go to Kulusevski necessarily, but Salah is the obvious choice this week. That's why I haven't done a whole separate video. And I think form and stuff like that can change really quick. So after this week, we might suddenly be thinking, actually, maybe Liverpool are back, maybe Salah's back, and then he's got another good run of fixtures. We'll probably be looking to captain him for a few more weeks to come yet. So there's been quite a bit of talk this week about selling Haaland, mostly because of those quotes from Pep Guardiola, where essentially he said when there's midweek games, when they've got like 3 games in 7 or 8 days, he's going to play everyone from the squad. He's happy to play Alvarez over Haaland. Obviously, we have to kind of take him at his word, but there's nothing to say that Haaland won't just start the next 3 games. And Pep's not necessarily talking rubbish, but Haaland's minutes might reduce, but not necessarily his starts. So instead of kind of playing 75 minutes plus in each game, he might start playing like 60 or 65, and they might manage him that way. So it's not guaranteed that he's going to miss 1 game, but I do think it's likely. That's not necessarily new information. I think most of us kind of assumed at the start of the season this would happen eventually, and maybe those midweek games would be a worry. I think it's just people are talking about it now, 1, because of the quotes, and 2, because we've got to the position now where there is going to be midweek games. So I asked people, are you considering selling / not owning? For what it's worth, I think he's going to start in game week 4. I think it's very unlikely he misses the Crystal Palace game. He didn't start against Barcelona in the friendly match during midweek. I think most people would agree he's going to start in game week 4. So there are quite a few people that are considering selling him in game weeks 5 or 6. I think a lot will probably depend on how he does against Palace. A lot of people also holding 34.4%. There's a few people that don't own, and some people are selling this week. I just don't think I would sell this week unless I had 2 free transfers, absolutely nothing to do, and I was 100% positive that Harry Kane, who I think is where most people will go, is definitely going to play a lot more minutes than Haaland. And that is one interesting thing, right? We know that Haaland's minutes, and when I say I know, we can pretty much be sure that his minutes are going to be reduced over the next few weeks. But we're all assuming that Kane's minutes won't be touched at all, where they could be. Now, I don't think Kane is going to start missing games and being on the bench in easier games or anything like that. He's a bit of a machine when he's fit, and he does start more often than not. And obviously, you could replace him with Richarlison, but it's not kind of the same player. I think Richarlison's more likely to take minutes off Son, but he could take minutes off Kane, and that is a bit of a worry, right? So it's not that Haaland's going to completely miss games and Kane's never going to miss any minutes. It could be that Haaland's minutes are reduced. Yes, he might get the odd bench in. Maybe it happens to Kane as well. So you have to be 100% sure that's not going to happen. And I think the way the fixtures fall, the fact that Kane's good fixture is this week, Nottingham Forest away, then he has West Ham, which, okay, is not an awful fixture given how they've played so far, but it's not amazing either. And that happens in the same week that Haaland plays Nottingham Forest at home. And I'm just not sure I'm that confident that he misses out completely that I want to get rid of him. Because what if he plays game week 4 and 5 and it's 6 he misses? If he lines up from the start against Nottingham Forest at home, that is going to be a big concern as a non-owner, because that is probably right now, from everything we know, the best fixture you can have on paper. So I'm probably not going to sell him this week, and if I don't do that, I don't see me selling him next week. And also, the interesting thing with Haaland is he's had 77 and 73 minutes in the first 2 game weeks so far. Both those games were pretty much won. They were really in control against West Ham. They were obviously 3-4-0 up against Bournemouth at that time. That game was done. And then Newcastle, he kept him on for 90 minutes. So if he was that concerned, and he mentioned in his quotes about the fact he didn't play 90 minutes last year, if he was that concerned, even with a game to kind of chase and try and win against Newcastle, he would have brought him off. So he was obviously happy to do that. And it was discussed in a space that I tweeted last night. Really good information, by the way. If you go on my timeline, you can find that space and watch it. So I'm probably, or listen to it, I should say, I'm probably not going to sell him. I think the options people are going to are Harry Kane, who we've just spoken about, is not necessarily completely against reducing his minutes as well, or to De Bruyne, but you've got to pay more money for that pleasure. And when they're both on the pitch, Haaland and De Bruyne, I think Haaland is the better option. So for me, I'm probably going to hold. Let's reassess next week. I think if you've got 1 free transfer this week, you give him the Crystal Palace at home game. Yes, it's not an easy fixture, but this guy, Haaland, could have scored way more goals than he has already. I think there's a big haul just around the corner, and nothing to say it won't happen against Crystal Palace. So hold him this week. Let's reassess in game week 5 when we're going to start getting those midweek games. So I know I already covered Mason Mount in the game week preview, but a lot of owners are still kind of unsure what to do. So we can cover this fairly quickly. Should Mason Mount owners keep or sell? 50.3% of everyone that responded said they should sell this week, which is interesting. And by the way, I'm not completely against it, but I don't think that Mount to someone like Rodrigo, without a good way to then spend that money, i.e. with 2 free transfers, is necessarily a good move. I know some people have downgraded Mount to upgrade their defence if maybe they were missing someone like Cancelo or Reece James. And again, I don't think that's a bad move whatsoever. Although Reece James playing right centre-back again in the last game was not great. That needs to stop. He needs to be right wing-back because that is where he's best. So I'm not completely against selling Mount this week, but I think for a lot of people it's better to stick, especially if you've only got 1 free transfer. Because doing Mount to Rodrigo, okay, yes, maybe you would have caught price rises if you've already done it, but if you haven't made that transfer already, you've already lost another 0.1 on Mount. Rodrigo's just gone up. That's probably not going to happen again before the deadline. So I think you give him the Leicester at home game, which is a pretty damn good fixture the way they've defended. I'm sure Everson and Ward owners are not very happy right now. You give him that game and you reassess next week with 2 free transfers. If you could sell to another £8 million midfielder, maybe you do it if it's someone like Diaz, but I'm not sure I would do Mount to anyone like Foden or Kulusevski or Maddison or anyone like that this week. Even Saka, right? I just don't see why you would do that move given how he's playing as well. So I completely get why there's doubts over Mason Mount. He hasn't played that well so far. That Chelsea attack isn't clicking. His numbers are a little bit down as well. But again, it's only been 3 games, right? Things can change quickly. So 27.5% think you should keep in the short term. So that's basically for like game weeks 4, 5, maybe 6 as well. Some people think, or 22.3 think you should just keep him for game week 4, then look to sell him. But most people think you should sell this week. So let me know down in the comments below. If you're a Mason Mount owner, what are you doing this week? Because I think I'd be keeping, but I can see why people want to get rid. So after Perisic's 12 points last week, a lot of people are thinking about bringing him in. I know I am too, right? He is someone that I've kind of wanted since game week 1, but obviously with all the concerns over his minutes, I just didn't go for him. I didn't bring him in last week either. If I hadn't done the Edison move last week and I was going into game week 4 with 2 free transfers and 1 million in the bank, I would be very tempted to do Cucurella to Perisic. Now, when I say that, don't panic, right? You don't need to force that move. You definitely don't need to take a hit to do it, right? I'm going to keep Cucurella. I'm not taking a hit and I'm going to play him this week. And I'm pretty happy to do that. But if I had 2 free transfers and 1 million in the bank, I think I would be tempted to make that move because he's just had a week off and I think he will start against Nottingham Forest. I almost think if you're going to buy him, it has to be this week. Not for a hit, like if you can do it for free, it's got to be this week, not next week. Because I think most owners will agree next week is probably when he gets rotated. So for all the people I asked, are you likely to buy him? A lot of people are still ignoring him just completely, which I don't think there's a right or wrong answer with Perisic. I think it's perfectly okay to ignore him because he is probably going to get quite reduced minutes over the next few weeks. But I also think he's such a good option when he plays. You can also make a case for bringing him in. That's not me trying to sit on the fence or anything like that. I just think it is that kind of way with a player like this. So if I had an easy route to him, I might go for him, but I don't, so I'm kind of okay to ignore him. But if we look at the fixtures for Spurs, so this is how it is right now if you just Google Spurs fixtures, but the Champions League games have not been added in. So they play Nottingham Forest this week. That's 8 days after the last game. I'm pretty sure that Perisic, unless Conte says something in his press conference, is going to start that game. Then the next game's on Wednesday. You've got to assume Sessegnon's going to get at least one of these 3 games. So either the Spurs, the West Ham or the Fulham game. Again, we assume it'll probably be the West Ham game because it's smack bang in the middle. But if Perisic is fit to start that, Conte might give him the harder game and then let Sessegnon come in against Fulham. So it's not 100%, but I think if I was looking to buy him this week, I would be quite confident of getting Forest and then Fulham. The problem is after that, the next game's 7 days against Man City. But as we'll see here, this is from Football London, they've then got Champions League on the 6th or 7th of September. And this kind of rotation of midweek games just happens. Like the kind of schedule for teams in Europe is pretty brutal this season because of the World Cup. So on the 6th or 7th, they got a game, 13th and 14th, then back to October, they got a game. And when you intertwine that with all of these, so they've got Fulham Saturday, midweek Champions League, then Man City, midweek Champions League, then Leicester, etc., etc. It just goes on. And I just don't see that Perisic will start all those games. And I think, by the way, that's going to be, it's not just a Perisic thing, that is just a teams in Europe thing, right? We could even see reduced minutes for Jesus, Martinelli, Saka, the Man City boys, etc., etc., right? Same for Chelsea as well. It could happen. So I think, again, just to go back to, just to sit on the fence a little bit, if I had the money and I could bring him in one move, preferably with 2 free transfers. I don't know if I'd want to use my only transfer on it, but you could still make a case. I'd be tempted to bring him in this week as long as Conte doesn't say he's not fit or a doubt or something like that. But otherwise, I think it's also okay to ignore. I definitely wouldn't be doing it for a hit. I just don't think that's worth it because the minutes over the next few weeks could be an issue. So I wanted to ask a question about Rodrigo because a lot of people, if they haven't already, are thinking about bringing him in. He's actually been transferred in this week alone by over 1 million FPL managers. His overall ownership is going to be huge right now, and that could hurt if he continues to do what he's doing. For what it's worth, I'm not that worried about him. Like, I do think he's a good option. I think anyone that's got a structure where you can bring him in, happy days. If you're on wildcard, I probably would have him as well. And I should say I have already looked at routes to how I could bring him in. Could I swap Luis Diaz to him and then use that money up elsewhere? Could I downgrade Edison and Cucurella and bring Rodrigo in and start playing 4-4-2 instead? So I have looked at it. I do think he's a good option going forward, but I think the idea that we should now be scared of him, I'm not so sure about, right? Again, things can change pretty quickly. But when I ask about whether he can still be a consistent scorer, I'm not really saying can he get 5 returns every 3 games, because that's just not going to happen over the long term. Maybe it will happen over the next 3 weeks. Stranger things have happened. But over a long period of time, that's not going to happen. But if he gets consistent minutes, his underlying numbers are always pretty good. So I think he can be a consistent scorer if he continues to get time in the side. And to be honest, with most people, the way transfers and wildcards are looking, by the time he's even a minute's risk anyway, when Bamford's fully fit, Sinisterra's fully fit, it probably doesn't matter because you could just get rid of him. So I do think he's a good option, but a lot of people are saying no rush. So in terms of engaged community, FPL community, people that follow me on Twitter and stuff like that, most people are saying no rush. Obviously, they could be influenced slightly from what I've said. I've kind of said that on a video already, but that's still quite a few people. 18.7% think you should just get him right now in game week 4. And again, I think it's one of those, a bit like how I spoke about with Perisic. If you've got 2 transfers, or if there's someone you need to get rid of, for example, if you've got the money to go from Leon Bailey or Neto to Rodrigo this week, that's probably a good move. But for most people, where they've got a team full of players with great fixtures this week, I don't think it's a transfer you need to force. You could just get him in game week 5 instead. And only 5.4% of people just said he's not a good option at all. I definitely disagree with that. And then 17.1 said yes, but get him after game week 4. I think that's my preference, and I'm not ruling out getting him next week. It's not in my plans right now. But look, if he gets, I'm susceptible to form and stuff just like anyone else. If he gets another goal against Brighton with the fixtures that he's got, the value, the fact that I could then use that money to upgrade elsewhere, I would be fairly tempted. But if you've not got him, don't start panicking. I don't think we need to suddenly fear this guy, although his ownership is damn high right now. So at the time of recording, Alexander Isak, and I think I've got that pronunciation right. If I haven't, please let me know in the comments. He hasn't officially signed for Newcastle, but it's one of those that looks like it's absolutely going to get done. He's already at the club doing medicals and stuff like that. So he's going to get signed. We don't yet know his price in FPL. I think he'll get priced at 7 million like Ivan Toney was at the start of the season. There is a chance they just price him at 7.5, which is what obviously Wilson, Watkins and Toney were at the start of the season. But I think they'll go 7 because he is a new signing to the Premier League. And they've underpriced everyone else, so why not underprice another player? But I asked the question, at what price would you consider buying him straight away? So putting him straight in the team because his price is so good. 46.8% of people just have no interest in him whatsoever. I think part of that plays into the fact that there are lots of forward options, so it's not like Isak can come in at a price where he's the only option. Mitrovic looks really good in a few weeks. Tony's playing really well right now. A lot of people are just not on structures where they have a third forward either, so that could play a little bit of a part into it. Also, his goal scoring record last year wasn't great. The year before was really good. Last year, not so good. So maybe he's somewhere in between in terms of what his output might be this season. Some people said 6.5 million or below. 20% of people said that if he gets priced to that, he'd come straight in. I would probably consider that as well, trying to force him in for 6.5 million or below. I just don't think that's going to happen. And it is worth noting that he's not going to play this weekend, and then they've got Liverpool away. So he's probably not someone we should really be looking at until game week 6. But from that point, they do have some good fixtures. Hopefully I can just pull that up now. So if we come on to Newcastle really quickly, I just wanted to talk about him because obviously he's new to the league. Yeah, Palace at home, West Ham away, Bournemouth home, Fulham away, Brentford at home. Like, he could be someone you bring in game week 6 until wildcard if he's playing well. And I think his minutes expectations have got to be good. I think Wilson's injured right now, so Isak's going to come in straight away and play that number 9 role. But even when Wilson is fit, I think Isak is still going to play either on the right or on the left, and that's positions that he's played before, both at club and country level. At least from what I've researched, I basically watched the video on Tifo IRL, which is excellent, by the way. If you're not watching Tifo for football stuff, you should. There's no kind of hyperbole and stuff like that. It's just straight up facts and opinion. It's great. Go and watch it if you're not already. And they did a really good video on what Isak can bring and how, like I said, his stats and stuff the year before last really good. Last year not so good. So perhaps there is a player somewhere in between. And they did keep saying he's a bit like Haaland, which obviously not from a... I don't think anyone's saying he's as good, but he's very tall, but still very quick, very technically gifted and stuff like that. So there is potentially a very exciting player that Newcastle have got there. But just to come back to what people were voting on, 20.2% of people said they'd get him in straight away if he was at most 7 million. 11.9% said they'd go up as far as 7.5 million. I'm not sure I would pay that right now. I think Tony and then Mitrovic in a few weeks at a cheaper price are probably better options. Both nailed on, both definitely on penalties, both guaranteed to pretty much get good minutes. We could hopefully say the same about Isak, but I think we need to see it first. For what it's worth, I think his minutes will be very good. But at least with the other two, we definitely know that. And if Isak is 7.5, the other two would be cheaper. And then 0.5% they get him at any price, which I'm not convinced about at all. But there you go. I added that in anyway. So he does look... Some people have asked me about my opinion on him. He does look like an exciting player. I think Newcastle fans are going to be very excited about having him in their team. I think he is someone that probably could have gone to a lot of other clubs in the league as well. Possibly even Man United should have been looking at him for the price he's gone. But I think we need to see what his price is and probably wait until game week 6. I don't see the point in rushing him in for Liverpool away. But if you are someone that's looking, right now, I can't think of a transfer this week. There's not really any good transfers for game week 5. Start thinking about your route to how you might get him in game week 6 if the price is right. So there you go, that is it for this one. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. If there's anything else that I've not covered this week, please do leave a comment below and I'll try and get back to as many as possible. I might do a final thoughts video later on today. There's not too much to talk about with my team, so I just don't think I'm going to make a transfer. But I could go through a wildcard side and just go through any of those questions from the press conferences and stuff like that I haven't already covered this week. If there's not enough to talk about, I'm not going to force a video out and you might just see me tomorrow for the deadline stream instead. But again, you might get a final thoughts video. Let's see how things go today. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you again soon.